we already have a couple of people in the meeting, I think we can start and everybody else joins a little bit later. So I'll start this session. I hope you can see my screen. First of all, the housekeeping things. There's a recording in progress for this meeting, as always, and by staying on, you consent to being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, that also goes for the chats. You can also watch the recording afterwards on our YouTube channel or via the meetup group. We'll post a link there, and just drop off for the moment. Let me welcome you with my co-host Augustine, who's usually doing the introduction, and he's right now, I think, just dialed in. So I'll take over the introduction now. You can contact us via LinkedIn. So if there's any questions afterwards, please feel free to add us via LinkedIn or post a question to Augustine via Twitter. You can see the connection there. I'll just admit a couple of people in. As for the next couple of sessions, so we have a full schedule for the next couple of meetups that you can see here. So this week's presentation on the Dataverse and Power BI by Laura. Thanks a lot. Then on the 10th, we have Abhinav talking about live data sets, Thomas talking about sharing is growing. Chris Wagner is coming on the 24th with how to become a data god. Michael with best practice rules for tabular editors, Analyzer. And on the 15th, we have Alexander with the Untruthful Art, 5 ways of misrepresenting data. So please feel free to share the information and join us for the next couple of sessions. So lots of interesting stuff coming up. So that's the next 3 sessions, like I just mentioned. And without much further ado, I'll hand over to Laura and her topic of Dataverse and Power BI. Thanks for being with us today, Laura. And yeah. I'll hand the presentation over to you.
Thank you. Let me just master the art of Teams, and I'll share a screen. And convince Teams that it really doesn't need to tell me these things. Hi, I am Laura Graham Brown, or more commonly known as Laura GB. I currently work for a company called HSO as a solution specialist. So I'm the Power BI person in the Power Platform team. So I'm also a BizApps, yeah, not data. It's a long story. BizApps MVP, which means I get to see all sorts of nice things. And this week I've been trying to stay in touch with what's happening at Ignite. I'm not doing it very well, to tell you the truth. So when I started with the current team I am working for, most of their work is in Dataverse. Okay, so I had to get my head around Dataverse, and it's not that pretty sometimes. It's really useful in some ways, but it's not that pretty. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to just click. Let's do this. My apologies. Wrong button clicked. There we go. So what is Dataverse? So I'm sure I'm sure versions of this has been shown, and no doubt this has changed because, hey, Microsoft change it on a regular basis. The diagram that has all the power thingies across the top and all the data sources that Microsoft would like you to use down the bottom. Okay, and Power BI is there, although lots of Power Platforms seem to forget it. But Dataverse is the preferred way of storing the data, and there are multiple versions of Dataverse. You don't have to have special licenses for some of it, etc. But lots of people do not know how to connect Dataverse to Power BI and what's the best way of doing it. Okay, so that's where I had to put together some things. So what is a Dataverse table? Okay, Dataverse tables, they were known as entities. Okay, just to confuse everybody. And then Microsoft decided that entity was too long a word, and so changed it to table. But it comes with all of these parts that go with it. Okay, so it's not just a table of columns. It's got all the relationships, business rules, etc., all the way through it. And actually, as a system goes, it's pretty cool. It was Dynamics. Well, it still is Dynamics, but it's where it came from. And Dynamics was customizable, and then they worked out it didn't have to be just Dynamics. You could also build Power Apps and Power Automate and all sorts of things on top. And so that is the Power Platform. And Power BI just happens to have the word power in its name, so it got included. I suppose that's one way of looking at it, but it connects up to Dataverse quite cleanly nowadays. So we're not interested in most of those things today, although I suppose Keynes possibly is one of interest, but actually most of the things we're interested in is the table of columns. What columns have we got, and what relationships have we got? Okay. For those of you who are DPAs or do any database design work, I warn you now, Dataverse is designed by citizen devs, so therefore it is not the prettiest thing in the world. And there'll be way more relationships than you possibly want. Okay, so be warned of that before you get there. But they have to have them in order for their apps to work correctly. So rather than just talking at slides, let's move over and actually have a look at Dataverse, and then we'll talk about connecting to it. So Dataverse is part of Power Apps. Okay, so here I've just logged into Power Apps, and there. Oh, by the way, something I completely forgot to say. Please feel free to interrupt and put in some questions. If you don't want to speak, just put them in chat. I'll try and keep trace. Or if you're feeling brave, interrupt me. I have no problems with people interrupting me. I really don't. You just got to find the points at which I pause. So here we are in Power Apps. There is a section here called Data. And in here you've got your tables. Now, when you set up a Power App environment with a database, it comes with a whole bunch of standard tables. So all the ones down here that have got standard next to them, just every environment has them. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of those. This is just the default view, but actually if I go for all up here, there we go. There are hundreds of the things. And most of those I'm not interested in. Let's go back to the default view. So there are things like a customer table and an account table and all those kind of things that we expect there to be in these kind of the standard things that we needed for an app. That is the idea. Okay. So you can build your own tables. So I've got a table here that I've built called expense. And these all get organized and put into things called solutions. So if you are going down this path, find out about solutions. And I've got a solution here called sample. And this allows you to do lifecycle management because you can export this solution through a whole lifecycle from a dev environment to test, etc. And if we go and have a look, so there's my expense table. That's the one we're going to look at today. And there's my expense table. And here are my columns. So just like if you've ever connected to SharePoint, it's got some similarity feels to it. So look, we've got created and created on behalf of and created on, and all these extra columns that are in there. And the custom columns are the ones I've added. Okay, so I've added in that there would be an amount base, etc., etc. And when you go to add a column, it gives you a panel over here on the right, which allows you to put in a name. So we're just going to give it a name of Hello World. Badly spelt. Okay. And in there, so if you notice, it's got a display name, it's got an internal name. You've got a whole set of data types that you can pick. They have some interesting parts to them. The parts that I would be a little bit careful of is choice and choices. Not going to have time to go through those today, but they are some interesting ones. Lookup pulls to another table. And there's a whole set of ones. There's a whole set of ones in there. They're just trying to make it easy to build these things. And then you click done, and it would add it to your term. You can also put in calculated columns. Okay, so we could make it calculated instead. So let's just stick to what we've got at the moment. If I go and have a look at the data, you have things called views. Okay, sorry, let me show you what views are. So views are columns to show. They're not quite SQL queries because they don't quite work in that way. They are just things from this table. But they give you different ways of looking at them. And so when I come and look in data here, this is the active view. You can see up in the top right-hand corner, I've got a whole set of ones that we can look at. The standard ones that there are is active and inactive, because there is a column that will tell you if a row is active or not. And that's in every Dataverse table that there is. So it's one of the common filters. But here's our data. Okay, so that's the data we're gonna have a look at getting into our report. We've got a customer, which if I click on the customer name.
Sorry, Laura, there's a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you would like to address it now.
Yep, go. Let me just have a quick look.
Yes.
Okay. So let me answer. So the question is, why would you like to use Dataverse instead of SQL database, for example? Okay, so so you might have so I know you can do this in server and make it work in SQL server, but remember this is aiming at non-DBAs. So what I can have is I could turn around and say,
I'm not sure if it's your connection. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for me it sounds a little bit broken up. Your audio.
Let me just try something. I'm just going to knock off over here. I'm sure let me go a moment. And let me just check my internet connection.
I'm not sure if it's only for me, maybe.
Okay. Yep, a couple of people said the same thing. Let me see what I can do. Let me just try something. In Teams, let me just quickly. Let's. Oh, I now can't. Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. Wait a second.
Now it's better.
I am gonna try. Is that better?
Yeah. Now I can hear you perfectly.
Let's go with that. So let's go back. Let's go back to the Fernando. If Fernando is a regular, if people haven't come across Fernando before, he's a regular person to these things. I don't think he does any work. He just comes and supports all the speakers. It's just great. But let me go back to my question. Why would you like to use Dataverse instead of SQL? So one of the advantages of Dataverse is it comes with all these forms. You can build up a whole set of very quick reusable items. So if I wanted to build an app, I would just turn around and say, we'll use the default forms, and it would bring all these things in for me. You also can overlay on the top of it complicated permissions. So only the owner can edit something, maybe you could set up, or only the owner and the owner's manager could edit something, or certain people can edit certain columns. and it all can be set up so that it rolls out quite easily. That's the reason. So it behind the scenes it has got a SQL a SQL database. Once you start playing around with it, you do realize there is a SQL database behind, but Dataverse adds that extra layer on top, so it allows you to build model-driven apps very quickly, allows you to do governance, quite complicated governance, reasonably quickly. It can work off your Active Directory security groups, those kinds of things, and it doesn't require somebody to look after a database in very basic terms. It gives all the database functionality plus a whole bunch of data on top, facilities on top, such as form design, simple charting, and those kind of things in there as well. Does that answer the question? Is that okay? If you've got more questions or you want more on that, do say. Okay. So I clicked on Alice Arkwright, and this has brought me into the form. I can fill in various things. I've managed to I've embedded a Power BI chart onto this form, and then there are links in here that I can click into, and I haven't left Dataverse at all yet, but I can click into the account that she works for. Okay, and there is Power BI loading again and doing various things. Okay. So it gives you a and this is just me doing dragging and dropping of forms. Okay, the Power BI is a little bit more complicated, but this is just dragging and dropping of forms, and I could then design up an app very quickly to say this is how I want it to go. So that's the advantage Dataverse has over a SQL Server database. Okay, it's literally the layer on top that it adds rather than just raw data. Okay, so I've mentioned, so if we want to get some of this data, okay, into our report, into what we're doing, okay, you've got the data here, but one of the weird things is there isn't actually the link in here straight away to get to your data in Power BI. What you actually need is in the right environment. So up here I have an environment, and you can have multiple environments. Okay, so here are there's the default ones for the whole company, and we've got another setup there as well. You've got to have a path to that environment to find the tables in that environment. And the way you get that is you go and have a look in the apps, and you find a model-driven app. It really doesn't matter what the model-driven app is. It doesn't even matter if it's not in the same solution or anything like that. You just need to open it. So if I open up this little app, oh, sorry, that is not what I meant to do. My apologies. I meant to play it, not edit it. I thought I was somewhere else. My apologies. Let me go to click on there. I can press play, or if I go back into apps and back at this level, I can just click on the name and it will play. So model-driven apps are they look very similar, lots of them currently. Microsoft have plans to change this all, but if you look, it's very similar layout to what we saw a moment ago. You can have multiple things down the side here, and you can walk around the various things. But the important part, okay, if we're going to connect Power BI up to it, and I've just realized I don't think I've fired up Power BI anywhere. We'll start off in a second. Is the part you need is this part of the URL up here at the top. Okay, no forward slashes, just that bit there. So I am going to copy that, and then I am going to fire up Power BI. So I don't think I've opened it anywhere. Let me just check it's not on the desktop. Nope, it's not on that desktop. Right, fine. Let me just fire up Power BI. So there are two connectors for Dataverse. There is the old one, the legacy one, and there is the new one. Okay, the old one uses OData, so has limitations and has speed issues. The new one has some other issues, but it has it could do direct query. Is it possible to build a from Data Lake? There are connections to Data Lake, and I have to confess, I don't right, okay, I'm going to give you an answer here, but I don't know. I'm going to give you terminology here, but I don't know the full details. That you can have virtual tables in Dataverse. I have to confess, I've never done one. But there are, I think, ways of doing it to bring in a virtual table, so it comes in like it's an entity or table, but actually the data lives somewhere else. So so I think so, but I'm not convinced of how you do it. I don't know how that's done. Apologies. If you get really stuck on that, okay, my Twitter handle, which I don't think I mentioned at the beginning, is LauraGB. I'm also on LinkedIn as Laura Graham Brown. Please reach out to me, and I will connect you to the right people who'll be able to answer that properly. So here we are in Power BI. If we go and click on the Dataverse connector, let me just type it. That's it. That's what I want to connect to. That is not what I expected it to do. I expected it to just ask me. They have changed it. Have I had an update in the last few days? That is not what I expected. How bizarre. How bizarre. That is not what I expected at all. Okay, so let me just see if it's going to give me my connection to my one and see what it does. They have changed the connection. My apologies. Well, that's going to be an interesting game. Sorry guys, I that's completely thrown me. I was not expecting that at all. So it's done it straight through my connector. So let's see. Let me just go. So if I've gone and found my environment, okay. And what I am going to do is I'm going to just bring in a couple of cards. Now, what you need to notice here is the names of all those tables are the internal names of those tables. It is not the display names of those tables, okay? So they're all LGB things, okay? So I'm going to go for LGB expense. I'm just going to show you a very quick, that's not quite, but I'm going to go for expense, and I'm going to go for account. Yep, sure. I could just. I'm slightly confused because this is not what the update that I was expecting to. All I did was press the Dataverse and ask me to log in, Fernando. Okay, that was all. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to take Fernando's suggestion, which is probably, but it's and I go data source settings. And I am going to go for. I think I've got in this file because I'm connected. It's probably one of those, but that's not making sense. I'm just going to. I will have a look at the connection in a moment, Fernando, and work out what's happened there. But I'm just going to pick my tables. So, Laura GB. There I am. Okay, so I'm just going to pick a couple of tables just to show you some of the things, and then I'm going to show you how I would do it, and we will work it out from there. So we're putting in an account. I'm going to go and pick up the contact table as well. And I am going to pick up the expenses. But it's LGB expenses. Okay. And then I am also going to go and pick up, see where we are, we can see our rows of data have come in. I am also going to go and pick up, I'm going to do a search for user, and I am going to bring in system user. Now, most people who play with Power BI would know full well that pressing the load button is a dangerous thing to do. But that's precisely what I'm going to do, just purely because, you know, the citizen devs that have just designed up that Dataverse, that's what they do. It asks you whether you want import or direct query. So I'm going to go for import. You could do direct query, which would mean you get the permissions coming through of whoever is viewing the report as well. No yellow buttons. Yeah, definitely no yellow buttons. So, I mean, I don't normally use this method at all in going in, which possibly is why how it's changed and I haven't noticed. So there you are. You can see that path that's coming through of where that's come from. Right. So let's just go and prove that we have some data. So there we are. We've got some data. It's come through. But let's go and have a look at the relationships diagram. Okay. Look at that relationships diagram. We've only got 4 tables. But that's what happens. Okay, and that is because of the created on behalf of, owned by, modified by, and all those things. So you end up with these 6 relationships straight away. I am not even going to try and pronounce your first name. But yes, your question, your comment there of the get data, comment data, it would prompt us to pass the URL. Last time I did it this method, even on the new connector, it would ask me to give the URL. Okay, so that's what I was expecting, and that's why I copied it. But they've changed it to not require the URL. So that's the issue of what we've got going on here. Okay. All of the column names will be the internal names, not the display names. Okay. And there are way too many columns. And when you go back into, so let's go and have a look at let's go and have a look at what would have happened if we'd gone and done transform. And let's just go to my expense table because there's more data in here. And there we are. We can see all the different columns that are in there. Okay. Now, the other issue that I've got, I'm just going to quickly check on the source that I'm expecting. The source is going to look like what I'm expecting. Yeah, it is. I think. That's going to be an interesting thing. Let's see if it is the. So the part in here that actually, so my issue comes, okay, my guys immediately turn around to me and say, well, okay, fine, Laura, we're going to develop in this environment. But then our lifecycle management, we're going to pick up all that. We're going to pick that all up and we're going to move it to another environment. And then we're going to pick it all up and put it in another environment. So just like you would go through different databases if you were doing it. So therefore, I end up wanting to parameterize all this so that I can have that source as a parameter. And then also, I then end up coming into here and going, do you know what? We're going to do a choose columns. And we're going to pick a whole bunch of columns, etc., etc., and we'd come through and do them all. That's and then I want to rename all those columns because LGB name shouldn't be LGB name. I want it to be name. Amount base shouldn't be amount or customer, etc., etc., etc. All those things I want to change. And so this is where I got incredibly irritated and incredibly cross. And then my previous employer sat me on the bench for 10 weeks, which meant I had 10 weeks to write a tool. So that's what I did. Okay, so I then changed from this. Okay, so this is what we're going for, but I'm going to show you the way that I would build this tool. And we're going to go with, and I'm going to show you a different tool that I use to get to this point and with only the columns that I want. Okay, so we're going to go with a I'm going to go close and apply, and I'm going to go for a brand new report. I could delete all those, but it'd probably take longer than me just saying let's have a brand new report. Okay, and while that is loading, I am going to go and show you so I put it out on GitHub. I'm perfectly happy to put out a link. Let me put out a link to that on the in the chat. And I do releases as people break it and I work out things. And yeah, I apologize. It's written in Excel VBA, but I'm not a developer. Okay, that's the language that I can develop in. And if somebody wants to take it and put in something better, brilliant. But it gives you an Excel workbook like this. Okay, and you put in the environment path up here, and you click refresh tables. And what it will do is it will go off and it will find you. It will go and get you, pardon me, the list of all the tables. Okay, the version that you download doesn't have these tabs over here, the system user, etc. in there. It just has it just has a sample of list of tables here. Okay, then I come through and in here I pick the ones that I want to keep, and I think I've already set this one up to pick up the various ones. Let's not have calendar because that's and that's not required for this one. And then I click create sheets, and it will go and create me sheets. Okay, which look like, let me just include the blanks, which look like this. Okay, and the code up here, and I've just written some formulas up here, which as you put in a Y in the keep column, the formulas at the top there, add them. And literally all it's doing is it's picking up the source where it's coming from, and it's putting in, filtering down to the table. It's then picking which columns you've selected, and it's renaming them to the name that's next to them. That is literally all we're doing in here. Okay, so I am going to quickly show you. So there we are. We've got a blank report, and what we're going to do is we are going to go for a straight into transform data. And I am going to go and manage parameters, and I'm going to add a new parameter called environment. And I'm hoping nope, that's that. I copied something else, didn't I? Of course I did. Oops, that's not what I wanted it to be. Let me just quickly make sure that is text. Because in my experience, Power Query is helper, is happier if you specify these things. And I am then going to go and find Excel. Because Excel has it. And I've lost Power Query. Where's Power Query gone? There we go. Let's just change that one there. So, so I've saved the parameter in there of my path, my thing, which means that I can then use, then to move this report to another environment, it's literally just change the parameter value, which you can do with a pipeline or you could do manually. Okay, so I then go back into my Excel. I'm going to just quickly pick up my expense. Okay, now let me show you. So there was let me just unfilter this for a second and explain. So one of the columns is a choice column. And so when you come and have a look at columns that you want to keep, right? If I look in here, so if I look for the customer, so I've got a customer row there. There is also, when you do a part in here, you can also bring through the customer name, because actually it's embedded in there. You don't, so if all you want is the value of what the name is, you can do that in there as well. Okay, on choice columns, so let me go and find a choice column. Status reason and status. Okay, status and status name, all these kind of things are like choice columns. So there is the number version, and quite often it's a GUID, be aware. But there is the display value. Okay, so you might have that in all of your so I've got an expense type and I've got an expense type name. Okay, so let's just bring through both of those and we can sort those out, but I can show you what they look like. I've also included all the views that might have been designed with the table so that you can filter down to the columns that are in those views. So then what I do is I just pick up the M code, copy that. Remember that I was using different desktops. And then I'm going to go for a new source and I'm going to go for a blank query. And we're going to go to the advanced editor. Okay, there is another version of this in what's called XRM Toolbox. That also helps you. Okay, and when I click done, there we are. We've got our columns there, and I've renamed them all to be the display names. Okay, so then I can take that and we can go and let's just quickly do that for, so that was the expense table. So one of the other interesting things in here, which is a delight, for anybody that is, so I got taught databases 30 years ago as part of my computer science degree. And although databases have changed an awful lot in that time, there are some simple things in my head that should be. This customer column here, okay, and there's a GUID, right? And those GUIDs look fine, okay. But actually that customer column is related to two different tables. Some of those GUIDs go to the accounts table and some of those GUIDs go to the contact table, okay, because this is what's known as a polymorphic column. Yep, one column can have two types of data in it. I did turn around to Microsoft and say why, and they just went, seemed a good idea. Didn't quite put it like that, but that's basically what they said. So be aware, there are some interesting polymorphic columns. Customer is one of the a customer column type is one of them. There are multiple ones out there. Okay, so I'm going to put in there a let's add in a couple of other ones in there. Teams didn't scroll down. Oh no. Nope. So what I'm going to do is I am now going to go and get a different one, just to prove that it works. Okay, so let's go for the account. And what I've gone for is a column that is a regular column that is in Dataverse. Is nearly every table has an owner, and these are quite often related to permissions. You could quite easily set up a table that says only the owner of a record can edit it, that kind of thing. So those get used a lot. So I'm just going to bring in that one as well. Okay. Okay, and you end up with the GUIDs are used everywhere for IDs inside Dataverse, which does mean there are some interesting functions that don't like them. If you are doing any hierarchy things, like using SQLBI's wonderful parent-child pattern, it doesn't work with GUIDs. You have to go and find something to replace the GUIDs with another version. I usually go replace them with some index columns and things. So that doesn't quite work, but it works otherwise. So once I've gone through these and I've set them up, let's bring through just 2 more in there. So I'm just going to quickly do a black query. So contact is the other thing that could connect to there. And what I try to do on the Dataverse projects that I have to work with is I will set up each of these tables. The concept from Accelerated BI. Surrogate key for better performance. If I understand rightly from that one, I have to admit I can't quite work out if that's the same one as things. I think they're using it to stop the big long keys. Is that what they're doing? Is they're replacing them with integers so that you don't have to store them? Is that what it is, Fernando? So my thing in there is, yes, there probably is a really good case for it. There probably is a really good case for it if you've got large data sets. I would say the thing to go and look at is I would use DAX Studio to actually work out how much of my model is being taken up by it. I would also go and have a look at the speed differences it's going to cause. What am I doing? I'm doing another new source. I'm doing one more. And see how that affects what I am. Which one haven't I done? I've just lost it. Account contact system users is one I haven't done. I would go and see which how much of a difference it makes. Obviously, on this size data set I've got today, it won't make a difference at all. But when I am working with some of these Dataverse, and Dataverse can handle large amounts of data, probably not what people would call big data, but large amounts of data. So hundreds of thousands of rows, it probably can. And at that point, oh yeah, probably losing some, changing some GUIDs into something better is probably an idea, or reducing the number of GUIDs. If all you need is the contact name, well, let's not go via the GUID. Let's just bring in the contact name. There's probably some quite good things there that we should be doing to reduce down that. But now I'm curious. So you should have do this in oh, that's that E is not required. So everybody who logs into your database will have into Dataverse will have a record in the user table. So that is why we have so many IDs in here, and it's only my users. It's only my private environment, so I haven't got as many as you'd expect. But you could end up with a very large amount of data in here, as in it could be your whole company quite easily. And actually, I would expect it to be everybody who has access. I am determined to put a P in there. Everybody who has access in there. Now, once you do these, you copy and paste in these bits of code into here. I'm then going to go to close and apply. So I've created all of the ones. I've created them in here. So the first thing when you come back into here and you close and apply, it's going to ask me whether I want them to be direct query or I want them to be import. those who need to leave, great to see you. So I could go in, I'm going to go import on all of these, but there is an argument for looking at direct query from Dataverse because it puts in the permissions from Dataverse. Okay, so that if you don't want people to be, that you can bring through the permissions if you're using direct query, and obviously it doesn't work on an import. Import works on it using my ID rather than anybody else's when it does the refresh. So there are arguments for using both, and probably Dataverse is probably one of the few places that I do occasionally do direct query. And now if I go and have a look with our nice tidied up version, I've got now my issue here, I think, is I haven't got enough data between these two guys. So that's why I've got a one-to-one in there. But actually, I'm going to delete it because I'm not going to worry about which companies. And I would probably do some building between these contacts and accounts so that when it comes to expenses, if I put it to a contact, it would go to that account and do it that way. It's probably how I would build this out. But I can then bring into here the user to owner. Okay, so one person can own multiple accounts. That makes some sense, and we can. So that brings us through so that we can quite quickly. That's not what I wanted. I wanted here, so I can quite quickly bring into here a contact's full name. And the expense amount. Oh, it's blank. That's a bit. Let's not bring in the contact. Let's bring in the account because I think I've got more on those ones. Okay, and I want the account name to be on the axis. Okay, so there we are, of course, the various companies, and I could bring in the expense type, the type name to be the legend. Okay, now if we go and have a look at if we go and have a look at the expenses, and I mentioned the expense type part before. The expense type here is an integer, okay, and it's got a prefix, and you get to choose what the prefix is, and then it's and then you type in the values, okay. So if I switch back into that's not the right way. Where have I put? Oh, I've left it down here. My apologies. If I click into here and I click into one of my forms. If you get to the point where you're being shown the form, but actually you have no idea where these values are and which columns these are, and you're trying to find them, okay? And display names can be changed to all sorts of weird and wonderful things. There are various tools to help you get to that place, okay? So up here, I've got a little tool called Level Up. And if I click on there, it gives me a whole set of things and logical names, internal names. That's what they are. Okay, and I can click onto there, and there you are. It puts in the little label next to all of these as to what they are. Okay, what the internal names are. Why 1968? It was a wonderful year, great vintage year. It's when I was born, and I had to come up with a number, so that's why I came up with 1968. So the data can be done. The data can be sorted here so that actually you've got your sources. Okay, if you are looking for actually wanting to go and find the one, and we're not expecting it to be Dataverse here, there is a get data. It all comes under. If I do them more, it all comes under Power Platform. Okay, and there is the common data source legacy version from before. Okay, and there is the Dataverse one, which I'm assuming is going to do exactly the same and give me the whole set of environments, which it never did before. That has sneakily changed because I don't come in this way very often. That has sneakily changed in the last update, and I obviously haven't watched the update video, or no one mentioned it. Okay. It's a bug. Yeah, it's a feature. It's a feature. I have worked with Microsoft products for way too long. It's a feature. So, any questions? It's all gone very quiet. I am going to go back to this way. No, this way. Back into this browser. Okay. So, things to be aware of inside Dataverse that aren't quite what you expect them to be. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to expenses here, and I'm just going to go for a new. So let's put in let's put in a new expense record, and I'm going to put in hotel in Dusseldorf, because one of my things I put in today was flights to Dusseldorf, because that's where I'm going at the end of the month. All right, okay. Relationships. Let me show you the relationships. I will get to relationships in a second. So when there's two questions there. Okay, let me just quickly show this part of the demo, and then I'll go to those two questions. So under customer, if you remember earlier, I mentioned that it's a polymorphic column. We can see in here we've got our ones in here. To get that drop down to appear, by the way, I pressed return. Okay, and that's what that populates. So if you click into there, you press return, it'll go find it. If you start to put something in and press a return, it'll find you all the ones that fit it. Okay. Obviously we've got reasonably nice things in here. I haven't set it up to be UK. Drop downs. Okay, so this is just a straight choice field, and it comes up like this, and that's how you can tell it's a choice field rather than a choices field. Okay, a choices field has a separate table, which, as far as Dataverse is concerned, it's a many-to-many relationship, but there is a hidden table which is coping with that many-to-many relationship. Okay, so actually it's just two one-to-manys. So what about relationships? So let me go and show you relationships. Oh, wait a minute! I can't put text in an amount, Laura. Let's have a hotel. Let's have 400. So let's do save and close. Right. Relationships. So let me go back into that table. So I'm going to go back to my solution just so I can find it quickly. And my tables. And let's go into expense. Yeah, choices. Who let Microsoft name things? And by the way, they are different, just to be a delight. I'll go and find you a choice. I'll go and add a choices one in a second. So relationships. So behind the scenes, here are the relationships, and it will show you the ones that I've got in here. Okay. And these are the relationships that will automatically get brought through if you bring through the related table. So the reason we got so many relationships earlier was because I brought through the user table. Okay, and there are, you can see the two relationships there that look remarkably the same, apart from the fact they connect to a different table. Okay, that gives you the hint that you've got a polymorphic column in there. So if I get back into this table, Sorry, that's not what I meant to do. I'll go back into this table and I go to the columns, and let's add in a new column. And what we're going to add into this new column is we're going to put in, I don't know. Oh, financial year. That'll do. The fin year of it. Okay. And I'm going to make it a choices. Okay. And you can either pick one that already exists, or you can make up your own. Okay. So I'm going to go in and pick one that already exists. I'm hoping there's a year one in here. There's a month. Is there not a year? Fiscal period, fiscal year, that'll do me. Okay. So that's given me the details there. And if I click done, and then click save table, because I always forget that part. So just while that is saving, recommend which of the columns can be removed from the entity while connecting to Power BI. Okay, so let me explain. There's a couple of naming conventions you need to be aware of. And let me see if I can see it in this one here. So there is a record there called expense ID. And it has the display name the same as the table. Okay. But its internal name is, we've got an ID on the end of it. And it's the unique one of this record. So that's kind of guaranteed. So to tell you the truth, with regards to what columns I would keep and what columns I would lose, literally you need obviously the ones that make up the relationships that you need to have in there, and then you need the other ones that are there for your reporting. I would remove everything you do not need. Really remove every column you do not need. Keep that model nice and slim. You can always come back in, add it in afterwards. So actually, yes, I would make sure that you're down to the bare minimum. And these IDs, and also obviously when you get into Power Query, please make sure that you are obeying all the rules you need to keep query folding. Okay, because query folding needs to be, it will make your everything a lot quicker on refreshes, or obviously for direct query you have to keep it clean. If I go and have a look at this fin year of relationships now, okay. If I save that table, does it put a relationship in there? Does it hide it? If I remember rightly, it hides it. It's not in there. But there is a hidden table. So if I now come back in to my Excel, and I'll get it to run while I answer another question. My entities. What I'm going to do is I am going to go to my blanks there, and I'm going to do refresh tables, and I hope it just works. Never run VBA code as a demo. So going to Fernando's question. I'm sorry. Does that answer your question regarding the columns? Is that okay? If you've got more questions, please do pipe up. I'm going to Fernando. But while I'm just waiting for that, Fernando, the relationships don't transcend to Power BI. Brilliant. Thank you. When yapping now. I'm not going to try. No, let's not try, Laura. I'll upset. I will be insulting. You. So there we go. Let me just lose that for a second. But I'm going to go. So the relationships live in the Power Platform, but Power BI can bring them through. Okay, so Power BI understands it just as it can out of a database that's got relationships in it. Let's change the relationships, and let's just change that to all. And I don't think that's going to bring it through either. No, it's not there. Let me just quickly do a Control F5. There is not a fin year one there. But when I come back and I look in my Excel, and I go and look under fin year, is there? Actually, I'll go look under LGB. That's probably the best place to go look. It might not be in there. There is a challenge. It's not under it. LGB. L in the alphabet is before M. That's slightly concerning. I can't see any of them. It is there. Oh, there. Let me just go and find them. Are they right down? By the looks of that, they're right down the bottom. Sorting. Last time I sorted this table, because I thought it would be clever, it just died on me. So I've got LGB expense there, but I haven't got anything else been added. So there's no other tables that have been added in there, but there is a choices table. So when I go and have a look at LGB expense, okay. What I'm going to do is this is my older version of the code. I don't think I can refresh this page. So I'm just going to put a 2 on there for a second, and I'm just going to go and rebuild that. I'm just going to go and rebuild those pages just to bring it through. Or I can actually just go into Power BI and do it there. Let's just do it in Power BI. My apologies, I'm burbling. Power BI, into Power BI. So let's get back into transform the data. And on my expense, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a refresh, and I'm going to, and there's also one other column that I possibly should have mentioned when people were asking about columns and things. So I'm just going to go. Oh, so this one has, I didn't, there is in, before I do the select columns, okay, there are a set of filters that you could put in. Okay, one of them is to go for state code name is inactive, or the other one, which is probably the better one, and I was talking with a guy called Scott Sewell, who is on the Power BI team for Microsoft. He's the person that understands Dataverse out of the Power BI team. None of the rest of them don't as much. Well, they do. The engineers do. The people who are active in the community. Scott Sewell is the right person. There is another one called state code, and not state code name, and you just set that to 0, and that would do the same thing. And that would probably be a faster way, and that will just pick up your active records. So what I am looking for is, and let's go to view, and let's go to column and LGB fin year. Oh, none of them have been set. Let's go and, oh, I think, see, I shouldn't add things to my demos without thinking about it. Let me just go and put some data into that one there. And let's make sure that I can put in multiple values. Okay, so what we're going to do is just going to go and check that column. So that's all the years that I'll be able to pick. Can I take it? Can I change it to say multiples? Possibly I cannot on this one. My apologies. I'm going to go and make one up. Let's make it a choices. And let's put in there to be drinks, because I can make those up quickly. And I'm going to go to choice, and I'm going to go to new choice, and I'm going to go for T. Oh, and it puts text in there, which drives me up the wall. Why can't it just leave it blank? But hey, and a few more options. I thought there was a way for me to put in multiples. Maybe there isn't. Maybe that's something I can't do. So I've put in that one. I've got to put in done. I'm now going to go and have a look at my data. And let's just hotel in Dusseldorf. Let's edit that row. Wine for you. Sorry, Fernando, you didn't get any wine. Ah, it's not on that form. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to do a save and close. We're just going to go to that form. My main form. Oh, okay. Dismiss that for a second. Save the table because I added a column. See, that's I always forget that part. And my buddies who work lots in Dataverse get all upset about it. So this is the form editor. I did not intend to get into there in this particular example, but I can now go and find my forms, my things in here. I could bring in a financial year. Let's put it in there. And I can also bring in my drinks. Is not there, is it? I've done something wrong. You always need to save, you always need to publish. I'm just making sure that it needed a refresh. Dusseldorf, end of the month. Oh, sorry, there's been a disconnect. Yay. Let's just go back to. It didn't let me do it. Let's just go back to here. For those that aren't aware, so at Dusseldorf at the end of the month, there is a conference called Collab Summit happening in Dusseldorf on the 29th and 30th, 31st, something like that. There's only 100 tickets left. See, there's my promotion. I'm not doing a Power BI session, which is just really weird. I'm doing a session on Office scripts. And I am in the wrong environment. That explains that issue. Let's just quickly go and see. And we were in forms, and I was on this one. And I possibly have done something which I possibly shouldn't have done. Drinks. So we can now save. And we can publish. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to quickly populate some data and refresh my data source. And we'll add the columns in manually, and I won't worry about renaming them and things. Okay, so let's pick that record there, and let's just go and edit it. So my financial year, if you see, it doesn't come up with an instant drop down when I press return. There you are. It allows me to go and pick. Now I can pick. What a weird range of financial years. I could go and pick multiples in there, okay, and it will just let me add them, right? And on my drinks there, I can select them all, okay? And I can save and close. So now let's go back into Power BI. And let's just go on my select columns. Pardon me. Let's go with my select columns and let's just quickly go and add in. So what we're going to go and look for is columns that mention year. Okay. And columns that mention drink. Oh, we need to do a refresh, don't we? Refresh the preview for it to be really happy. So let's type in year again and make sure we pick up that one. And then type in drink. Okay. And there we have the challenge of there are my financial years separated by a comma. There are my LGB drinks separated by commas, and it's not even the drinks, it's the IDs of those drinks. Okay, so I would have to go off and find the choices table and go and find what those choices were, okay, and bring in the values. So when it comes to ones that you could pick multiple values for, so choices rather than choice, you have to be more careful. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the details of being able to find that one. That is a blog post, I promise you, is in draft form at the moment, and I just need to do some corrections and testing on it before I press publish. But it's really close to being there. Okay, but you can go and find these values, but you need to go. So you need to go and find them. If you've got one up here that is that you've put in your own version. You have to go and find out what those are before Christmas. Yeah, I promise. Do not find out. You have me on Twitter. If it is not up there in the next couple of weeks, please feel free to hurl abuse at me. Okay, I will do it way before Christmas. I've got a whole set of blog posts to do with Dataverse. So my plan of how to deal with a customer column and how that works, as in a polymorphic column, how to deal with choices columns and how they work and what's the best way to handle them, because you want to get all of those choices in. And if we go back, and I'm not going to do it, but if we go back and look in Excel, you'll be able to find choices tables in here that will give you what it is. And you then have to build up your relationships to that. So I will have examples that we can use in there. I'm just seeing if it's called just straight choices, but I bet you it's not. There is one in here called choices because I've used it, but without putting up my blog post. No, it's obviously not called choices. Pretty certain it's option set. But I will need to go and confirm with my blog post. So I promise you, Fernando, you will get that one. I've gone way over time. Apologies if I was meant to finish at 1:30, but nobody told me to shut up. Any questions, guys? Any questions that you don't think I can answer, but you would like answered? I like the Tigger. He's not called Tigger, is he? He's the Frosty something.
Yeah, you're still well on time. We've got time until 7.
Okay.
So.
Okay, cool. Cool. So. Yeah, nope. Sorry, I'm used to most sessions only allowing me an hour. And I had my apologies, I should have picked that one up. So if I just quickly go in and let's go and see what these look like. Subscript header range. I've broken something. Oh, it doesn't like that at all, does it? No, it really does not like whatever I've just done to my code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it in manually. Let's do that instead. Let's do it the manual way, just so I can quickly see if we could bring it in. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go for the shortest one, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I am going to delete until end. And I am then going to go and look for a pre-certain option set. And what I'm going to do is let's just go and find it. Because hey, Microsoft called them option sets at one point. Well, that's just weird. That is just very weird. Let me just go back into Excel. It's not going to let me find it. I'm sure. Updates. Who let Microsoft have them? Well, that's gonna if they've done some change in here, that's gonna. I still will get my blog post out. I promise. I promise. Okay, so let's actually have a look at the other issue that I had was my polymorphic column. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about how to get that, how to fix that option ones, but I will come up with this. I will come up with a solution for that one. So on my polymorphic one, okay, if I go to before, now I deliberately did selected columns and I deliberately picked certain columns, but actually if I go into my filters, if I go to the step before, okay, and I walk into here and I go and have a look, okay, over on the right hand side, you will find here are the accounts, okay. So if I just do an expand on that account there, and actually I don't want any of the columns apart from the account ID. Yep, we're going to go. Yep, we're going to insert step. Okay, and you'll see there's the one record there that's got a null, right? If I go and do exactly the same on the contact one that's here. There you are. So these are, if I then on my select columns, I'm just going to add in those two columns that I have just columns that have got ID in them. There they are. And what I'm just going to do, just for demonstration purposes, is I'm just going to drag that over. And you'll be able to see, yeah. Well, insert step. Probably upsetting all of my query folding, but never mind. If no one tells Alex Powers, we're all right. These ones here, okay, are matching the values that are next to them. And that's one way you could handle this. And that's how I would handle it, is that I would then go and find out the account ID that goes with that contact to populate up that column so that I've got a value in there. Okay, that's how I would probably do it. And if I needed to do it down to contact level as well, I'll just have to cope with some of them not having contacts. Okay, so that's how I would. So there are, the tables are available there, but obviously, apparently we're still okay on the older. Going into the native query, so query folding is still working. I haven't broken it yet. So that's how I would cope with the polymorphic columns. You've got a number of polymorphic columns to do with activities as well. And they are about to come out with that users will be able to design their own polymorphic columns. So they're not going away, sadly. 1 second. Apologies there. My coughing got the better of me. So my let's go back to here. Okay. The Microsoft overview is the connecting into Dataverse. It's what Dataverse is. Okay, data platform introduction. On my blog site there, I've got one line which now is out of date, having done the connection in front of you guys, and it's changed. So I'm going to have to go and review that. And the Power Query Helper. There aren't that many people out there talking about this yet, because it's the old connector had some issues and things. So people were using other methods to get into Dataverse to be able to use a straight plain SQL. And a lot of organizations take the data. So the question that was earlier, which was regarding whether we could have a table from Dataverse, from Data Lake into Dataverse. There are very Microsoft have built ways of taking data out of Dataverse and into a data lake, just purely because Dataverse is very good for getting the data in there and building things in the Power Platform, but actually it is not the most easy database in the world to use as a straight data source, and with large sets of data, it's not amazingly, it's not the best thing in the world, and a data lake copes a lot better where you want to add in other data from your company. So any more questions? Fernando's left, so we've got no questions from him. He always has lots of questions. Are there people out there using it?
You can also unmute yourselves if there's any questions, or
yeah, please do feel free.
Laura, I think definitely. I mean, at least in my case, recently I did try to start giving it a try, but only not for Power BI. I actually wanted to have a direct query solution where I'm being able to connect also Power Query inside of the Power BI report.
So I say that again.
So I've actually tried it, I think last weekend on a direct query connection to Dataverse table.
Cool.
By actually embedding inside the Power BI report also on Power Apps.
Oh, okay. So embedding the so was that embedding the Power BI inside the Power App, or putting an app inside the Power BI?
The second version, putting the Power Apps inside the Power BI.
Yeah, and that's a at the moment, that's when I've tried that, it's been a very feels not quite totally clean, still a bit new, and still feels very much in preview, although it's been around a while. How did you find it?
I think it still lacks some customizations also on the Power BI side, at least on the scaling. And I think one of the things which I didn't like is that what I didn't pay attention first, where if you create the Power App directly from the Power BI by opening up the studio,
Yeah,
is by default he is actually going to take the phone layout.
yes, that is the disadvantage. That is the disadvantage. So therefore, yeah, you need to go the other way around and create the app in create the app and then bring it in, which works mostly, but I've had the odd situation where it's not been amazing. But I would my comment always there is I've seen it used, but I've not seen it used in anger. As in, I've not seen it used heavily by lots and lots of people. But I'd be interested to, and I've done sessions on that before. And it works. It's pretty cool. The problem a lot of people have is if you've not used a direct query, well, obviously when you make a change in the app, it's not immediately reflected in the data. So that is an expectation that needs managing.
Correct. Also taking into consideration on a pro licensing model that you could refresh it, but you could not refresh it more than 8 times.
Yes, that is another issue. Yes. And I have to explain that one multiple times to multiple people. Like, what? No, we can't refresh it 10 times. No, it's just the 9th time it says no. Yeah, unless you have the luxury of premium. So how are we doing?
If there's no more questions, I guess we can bring this one to a close. I'll just quickly take over the presentation again, if that's okay with you. Okay, just seconds. Yes. Yeah. First of all, let me say thank you for the presentation. And if people haven't used Dataverse yet, I guess they will start after your knowledge transfer and your introduction. So thanks again, Laura, for this.
My pleasure.
And for everybody else, and of course everybody who wants to join, again, as a reminder, next week, same time, we have Abhinav talking about working with Power BI Live, data sets and data flows, and the week after, Thomas Mertens with Sharing is Growing. And if there's anything that you want to rewatch, or if you want to look at this session again, you can do this via the recording that we put on YouTube. And if you haven't done so yet, feel free to join the Power Platform User Group Stuttgart under the link that you see here. That's it. Thanks a lot for your time, and I hope to see you all next week.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys.